All right, guys, we got the privilege. It was like we got bad news, good news, Maria, on Wednesday, because of course we got the bad news that unfortunately we have to wait one more day for the Atlanta Braves to begin their 2024 march to a World Series, as we've heard, World Series or bust this entirety of the spring training season. But we got good news too. We got an article. Ronald Acuna Jr. dropped an amazing article, I feel like, anyway, in the Players Tribune, where he really kind of walked us through his journey from being a child in Venezuela all the way up to where he is today, and how all of those experiences formed the now National League MVP Ronald Acuna Jr. I just have to ask you, I know all three of us had an opportunity to read it and kind of take it in 24 hours later. What was your biggest takeaway from Ronald Acuna Jr.'s article?
Accountability. That was my biggest takeaway from the whole thing, is that he was accountable for a lot of the things that, had transpired over the outside view looking in, since he's been with the Braves, and he kind of clarified a couple things, admitted that he was wrong in some of those instances. And I think what people forget about Ronald is that when he came to the Braves, he was literally a child himself, and he's matured over the course of that. And I think it's hard when you're growing up in front of a bunch of people. If you were to take a microscope of all of our lives as we're growing up, you wouldn't like everything that you see. It's part of being a human being. And so I thought that it was important that he admitted some of those things. He showed you that his hunger, his desire, his confidence, all of that is still there. But I just liked that people were able to see the maturation that I think all of us have seen, when you're closer to him on a day-to-day basis. And it's nice. I like the way that he phrased everything. I thought it was a really nice and well done article in the Players Tribune. I'm proud of him for doing that. And I think it took a lot of courage. He's the best player in baseball. And to take himself out of the spotlight for a second, but also put himself back in the way that he was very vulnerable. He was honest. I thought it was really, really great. I was so excited to read the whole thing. And I think the coolest thing of the entire article, I think I tweeted out the snippet from 2019 when he got in the argument and he learned from that, and all that's great. But to me, it was his vision for this year is they're at Truist Park and they're competing to be in a World Series championship. And he said, I need to be there. I need to be a part of it this time. And I thought that was very important.
Oh, yeah, Maria, I really like that as well, because I've always said that's what I reiterated almost daily on our old ATL Day One show, that I thought Ronald Acuna Jr. was on mission because he felt like he just wasn't a part of that run to the World Series. When you're not physically out there for that last out, if you will, or that last at bat, not that you didn't contribute, but you do feel some kind of way, like maybe you weren't there. And I feel like that was confirmation, like, yep, that's kind of what we all thought, that you've been on mission since that moment. Just no different than maybe what we're seeing with Spencer Strider and how he felt because of what happened with the Phillies last year. But yeah, I love the vulnerability, and I loved him kind of taking us back to that little boy, Ronald Acuna Jr. And yeah, that kid who would do what I think a lot of us kind of did in some way, shape, or form, right? Whether you were kicking the rocks or rock skipping across the water, or whether you were taking the newspaper and balling it up and making it a baseball. I think he all just got us to appreciate the human side. I think here we already love him, so it just made us love him more. But if you didn't really like him or know him, or all you knew was the bravado, Jarvis, that maybe you saw at the end of a blast to left, center, or right field, this now tells you this guy is not just a special human on the field, he's a special human overall.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I love how he framed the whole I love that fact that you brought up the whole celebration piece, because he talked about not only understanding, right, coming in and celebrating like that, but also saying like, hey man, this is who I am. Like I get so much joy when I get a hit, or just, you just tell like he just enjoys playing the game. And I think one of the things that I've always kind of been a little wary about when it comes to baseball, the traditional guys, quote unquote, is the fact that like you're supposed to celebrate a certain way or act like you've been there.
Sure.
No.
Yeah. But
like let me celebrate. I'm a human being. I have emotions. So it's okay to show emotions. And I think that, for him to go through that maturation process to say, yeah, as I look back, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that, especially for Dave since on day 2 since I got into the league, right? And hit a home run. But at the end of the day, like, I enjoy playing this game, and this is how I'm going to play it, and I have that right to do so.
You brought up a really good point, and I was thinking it the whole time, is that I really hope the traditionalists read this article. I think it's very important because baseball is changing, whether people want it to or not. And it's a good thing for the game. I'm a traditionalist, honestly, when it comes to football and uniforms. Like, I love old school. However, I also think it's important to adapt with the times. And baseball is a game that has needed to evolve for a long time. It's starting to gear towards a younger audience, and Acuna is that younger audience. And so you want to understand why he feels this way, why he acts this way. I've always loved his celebrations. I've always thought it was uniquely and authentically him. And taking that away from someone just because it's not traditional in baseball, I don't think is very fair. And so I think to listen to him say, this is my identity. This is how I live, breathe, eat, sleep. It is baseball. And the fact that he's become a dad. I mean, I even asked him that in spring training. Why is it different for you now? And he's like, oh, I get to bring my family around, and it's really nice to have them come along. And I'm sure he would have loved that experience when he was a little kid too. So I loved it, and I think everyone should read it.
Yeah, and I think too, another area where I thought he showed some maturity. Like, some people may have thought he was low-key throwing some shade at Freddie Freeman because he talked about leaders and how different leaders manage and how he's learned and grown from those situations. But I felt like he's learned and grown from those situations. We don't necessarily know how Freddie feels. Maybe that'll be a conversation for another day. But I think for him to also acknowledge that part as well, that's a part of all of our growth. Like, how many of us have not kind of bucked the system or tried to buck the system with authority and then look back and said, oh, I'm okay with bucking the system. Maybe I just should have bucked it a little bit different, or maybe I just shouldn't have gone as hard in the paint. So I think it was really good for him to talk about that as well, because that shows a level of maturation. I also think, and again, this is Tenitra saying this is not Ronald Acuna Jr. saying this, but personally, I like the timing because he's showing so many things to let you know, no offense, Shohei Ohtani, but they're just pieces to the puzzle that Ronald Acuna Jr. has just shown us, right? Like, he's always been open to talking to the media just through his translator, right? But I can understand if you're not talking yourself, maybe you don't have a lot of words to say. Maybe there's a little bit of apprehension, but the more we get to talk to him as well, like him, we get to see the personality, we get to see the passion, we get to see the frustration when there's frustration. We get to see it all. So I love that. I love that this dropped right before opening day, because he is putting his stamp low-key on this league and saying, yep, there are a lot of guys out there. There's a Shohei Ohtani, and there's an Aaron Judge, and there are so many other guys, but I am that guy, and I'm saying it's a different face, but I'm the face of Major League Baseball. I love it.
Yeah, it's so, like, just for him to be so vulnerable, like, I feel like that's so mature, right? But when you think about, like, hey, I'm a man now.
A man,
I came in as a boy, but I'm a man now, and be so self-reflective in the article. I just, and talk about, because some people may feel some type of way that, hey, he was upset because he wasn't out there in 2021, or some people maybe even look at it as being selfish. But for him to reveal that and kind of he like, hey man, I prayed to be famous, like I feel like my destiny. I'm actually achieving that. Like, not many people get a chance to do that. For him to say, this is what I want to do from an early age and be able to get to that spot, and then it be taken away in the biggest moment in the organization for him as a professional, and sit there have to watch it on TV. Oh my God. Like, that's not something that, that should be taken lightly. And for him to be able to reveal that and be open and honest about that, I feel like I'm excited. I'm excited about the season. I'm ready to roll. Like, can we skip through this 162? Maybe start at 81 and then kind of go on from there and kind of see how it rolls. That's right.
Yeah, let's just get to it. Yeah, I think it's absolutely amazing too, because think about, I just took my first international trip last year, and at 18, he didn't take an international trip. He moved to an entirely new country. Right. Right. So again, yeah. So again, you get to put all that context around his experience, and it just makes you love him all the more. But like you guys said, it also makes you excited about what we're going to see this season, because we thought he went off last year, but I feel like, everybody better just hang tight, because this guy is about to go off. It's going to be an interesting and a fun ride for him. It's ramping up, of course, for the Braves, ramping down in some way, shape, or form for the Hawks. So you got to ask yourself the question, should they or should they not, as this regular season ramps down, bring back their guy? We'll talk about it in Around the Metro.